So a little informal one, let's say. So this panel originated from the Vanguard new game that Tuomas is developing, and John Blanche's Vanguard, actually. A game about dualism, whatever you want to say.
Duels.
And so we have a little keynote, a little presentation regarding the game. And then we have a series of points to discuss with our magnificent guests we have here today. So thank you, Rugerfred, Alessio, and Tuomas for being here. And thank you all of you guys. Let's go with I think it's better, with the presentation, and then we'll go with the other points.
Okay, good morning, and nice to see you here. Panels are really the biggest things in the gaming convention, so it's really nice to see people finding the room. I couldn't originally. So, dueling games, we will delve into the dueling games as a whole, but I will first start in a very short presentation how I tackled the challenges of making dueling with miniatures and how I resolved those problems. But it's very important to understand this is not necessarily the only way you could solve them. But the problems tend to be universal when you try to make a dueling game, whatever it's in a role-playing, miniature game, even in video games, the problems tend to be very similar. So let's go through some of them. So first of all, you should always think why you are making a dueling game. Now, in Garde's situation, it was very simple. John Blanche called me and said, Thomas, I've come up with these duelists, you should make a game for them. And I just said, okay, sure, John, I'll make a game. Good, because otherwise I'll chin you. And I said, okay, yeah, don't worry, John, I'll make it. But dueling is actually, when you look at it, it's quite interesting subject matter for games. There is a huge aspirational potential, and it's untapped. If you look at the Hollywood films, there is usually this great duel. Whereas in the books, there's often the dramatic high point is a duel between the hero and the antagonist. There are all these legends which often are focused on a great hero's dueling. The most classic one obviously being the Achilles and the Hector. And of course in history, one of the most interesting things about Vlad Tepes, for example, the Dracul, was that he won half his battles. He just said that the thousands of men don't need to die. He went to the opposing general. We should just have a duel. He always won them. He just killed the other guy. But it was actually in an ancient history a good way to save a lot of human lives because only one person had to die. For the miniature games, the good thing is that you only need to develop a very small miniature range rather than hundreds of miniatures, which is expensive and time-consuming to produce. You have a clear focus for gameplay. Often when you are doing a game set just in a world, you have to cover a huge number of interactions. Like, for example, when you did the My Little Pony game, there is a lot of social, combat, movement, environment, weather. In dueling, you know exactly what you need to cover. It's a fight between two fighters. You don't need to do any boring models, because the problem often is when you're making a miniature game, you need to rank and file, and you need to do a lot of guys with spears and shields, and it's very tough to make them very appealing. While with the dueling game, every duelist is a really interesting, you can make them very unique and very appealing. And very importantly, there is no dominant game on the market. There are very, very, very few dueling games, even fewer miniature dueling games, and the ones that there are, like the Harry Potter, they are not duels. There is a huge group on both sides because they try to make it interesting. So on the flip side, dueling games is for us game designers in many ways the worst case scenario. You have a very limited action economy. You have only two guys. You can't give them hundreds of actions easily because they only have like their weapons. It's one guy. They can't fly and command armies, and they have dozens of weapon options. Like if you're doing a skirmish or army game, you can have lots of different types of troops. Here you have only two. Often what happens in the duels is that two models move next to each other. We start rolling off, and the one guy wins. So there are no tactics involved, so it can be quite boring. Because you have only two models, you have limited player agency. With a army game, you have all the units, all the characters, you have a lot of options. Who do I activate now? What do I make them do? In here, you're always going to be activating your one duelist and use that one. Again, the problem is that once you move next to your opponent, there is no more need to move. You just start stabbing each other. So a big part of most miniature games, which is the environment, it becomes completely irrelevant. And that is also a problem, because then you have no movement, so you have even less tactical options. And once you move next to each other, well, you both have maybe a sword and a dagger, so you're both just doing the same movements, and there is maybe a simple rock, paper, scissors counterplay, but that is not very satisfying for a longer game. And then you can either make the game very random, or once you start losing a game, there is very difficult to come back. If the other guy gets ahead, the probabilities are against you ever making your way back. So these were the problems I had to solve, and I just thought, okay, I understand why John gave me no options and just said, you have to design no matter what. I couldn't back off. So let's look at the problems and how I solved them in this case. So the first thing I did, I created a deck of cards that govern all the player actions. And you draw new ones all the time, representing the opportunities and the thoughts that come in your head and the situations in the game that give you more than one option. And these could be rapier lunges, parries, stabs, side steps, somersaults, is the elaborate bows, whatever it is that your duelist can do. And each card represents a different action. And I gave each character slots for these cards. You have left hand, right hand, and you have your stance. And by changing these, you can continuously, every turn, change what kind of attacks, defenses, how you are moving will change. And each stance then can modify your movement, your types of attacks, how you defend, which means that you are constantly evolving your attacks. Looking at if the other guy has a lot of attack cards, maybe you want to put up a lot of defenses or counter strikes, ripostes, parries. And the fourth type of card I did was the wild card, which is unexpected things like the falling down or knocking a weapon out of the other player's hand or kicking them in the nuts or the so on and so forth, which allow you then again to mix it up. But it's still, I had to think about how do I bring tactics to it, because if both players have the same deck, we're back into the problem of just being random and down to chance. So you can build your own deck out of a selection of cards. All the duelists share some cards, but they also have their unique cards, which makes them interesting and unique and different to play. You build your own one. You can put more defensive, more offensive card, more special tricks, the more stances that you can modify your fighting style. And each duel, you can go, oh, I lost the last duel. I didn't have enough attack options. So you put more of them into the game. I also introduced a dice as the energy mechanic. So you can look at these prototype cards. Each of them has a dice on the top right-hand corner, which tells what kind of a dice you can use and what limits it. So here we have in a knife fight, you can use only, when you roll d6, only 1 or 2 is good enough that you can use the knife fight. Double duty is a wild card, so it's free, and it will duplicate one of your dice. And the somersault, you have to have a 6, but then it allows you to jump over the opponent. With the knife fight, you can also see, you can use it multiple times, and if you maneuver behind your opponent, you do 2 points of damage instead of 1, so it encourages you to move around. And then you have to, when you build your deck, you have to think about what kind of actions I have, and what kind of a dice they need, because if you have all the most powerful attacks, they usually require 6s, and you need a lot of 6s, so it's very difficult to continuously just pull out the best attacks, because you are not going to roll only 6s. You need a wide variety of cards. So that's still, you have only 2 models. Now we're talking specifically about miniature gaming. Remember, miniature gaming is not just about the rules. I would argue that the miniatures themselves are at least as important than the rules. So these are done in 54 mil scale, which everybody thought was insane because everybody only collects 32 mil miniatures. But the good thing is there is very little competition in that space. We tied the cards that are unique to the duelist very tightly to what the models have. So you have a bigger immersion. So if the model has 2 pistols, then the unique cards that the character has have everything to do with the pistols. We created a lot of lore for each model, which makes the people get a real affinity with the duelist they pick. They like their background, the art, the lore behind them, their story, why they are fighting. So this gives you a more emotional attachment, which makes the duels much more interesting. The stakes are higher. Then I made sure that all the rules reflect both the model and the lore we wrote for them. So everything you read and see is reflected in the game. Movement problem. This was a tough one. So I divided the arenas into a grid. And I reward heavily positional play. So attacking from behind, taking a back step and then doing a long lunge is more effective than doing a lunge close by, because you need the distance for a good strike. You can sidestep, then play a card for swiping. If you've seen Rob Roy duel, you remember when the bad guy goes past Rob Roy and swipes him while he walks past them. So the rules heavily reward movement. Backstepping, it's the sidestepping, getting the right distance if you have pistol, and so on and so forth. How I made it so there is a choice to be made. Remember the action cards. For each action card you discard from your hand, you can move 1 square. So this way you have to balance between, do I want to use this attack or do I want to move? So you are making a trade-offs. Because obviously if I could just let you move freely, you would always pick the optimal movement. So there is no choice, because of course you make the move that is most effective. But here you have to think, do I want to save this card for a later turn? Or do I use it now for movement? Or do I put it play and activate it, but then I can't move? So this creates a multi-layered choices and tactics for the player. Repetitiveness. It's all about the dice. Remember I mentioned those. Here is a sample of my playtest duelist card. You can see that each one of them has a dice.
Let's change. Just
Okay, I think we're out of batteries. Let's see, but my glamorous assistants, my beautiful assistants are helping me. Yeah. Whoa! Okay, so you see this is how many dice this particular combatant rolls when hooked. And this then tells you how much of a power you have available, how much energy you have available each turn. And because the cards have a cost, if you pick up a card that requires 4 6s, you know that if I have a dice pool of 4, it's very difficult to pull that off. There are further wild cards that allow you to manipulate your deck, but that means that you're using your deck for those wild cards rather than for the action. So you need to come up with a good choice of cards and look at the dice pool of your characters. And this also forces you roll the dice, you look at your hand. I can't use any of these. So then you will use them for movement, draw up new cards, and try to come up with the cards you can use. Most of the time, if you build a half-decent deck, you can always do something, but you want to be able to deal with any eventuality. But of course, the opponent has cards to mess up with your cards. So for example, a disarm card. Well, you have in one of your hands, you have your sword. The opponent uses disarm. You have to remove that card because you no longer have the sword in your hand, and then you have to put another attack card. Either you're pulling another weapon or picking it up from the floor. So you can't just count on the opponent being passive. And then the end game. You'll notice that each duelist has this red area on their health points. Normally, attacks do as many hit points of damage as the card indicates, but once you're on a red, every attack does only 1 damage. This allows the guy who is losing, they have the chance to try to get you on the red as well. And then there are cards, attack cards marked with killing blow, that bypass that rule. So this is like beheading, disemboweling, a stab to the heart, something that would end the duel instantly. And then the guy who is on the red will probably want to have cards for defense and countering attacks because they don't want to take the killing blow. So then you have in the end the chance for the guy who is losing. You have this last-ditch effort of the bringing it back. And of course, some people will use their cards for healing items so they can try to claw back the stop the bleeding. But of course, then you are using your cards for healing and not attacking. So you have to figure out how you balance that. So we put forward this vision and put just this tiny little Kickstarter with just a handful of miniatures to see if anybody is interested. So did it work? Well, I am glad to inform that we've been quite successful already. And remember, this is just for 6 miniatures. And this gives us the budget to do the game that John wants us to do. So I am super grateful to all the backers. And maybe you want to check the game out. Now, I want to stress here, we will now go into, this was one way to solve the problem of dueling. There are many other ways, and there are many other types of games where the dueling is a problem. So this is what our panel is about, but this is how I solved it for Vanguard. Thank you. The model start game comes next.
Prova, meglio, carico, okay. Thank you. It was very interesting, and again, yeah. Now we can move to the other part, the broader part of the panel. It was interesting to understand that there are many problems. So we can also start with a little intro we shared already. It's the fact that we are speaking of dualism. The word duel, where does it come from? Comes from duello or duello in the Middle Age Latin, which is basically a mix of bellum, war in Latin, and duo, the number 2. Okay, so we know that it can be anything. We played many games, so it can be a play of 2 superhuman beings, we thought, or 2 ancient warriors representing the struggle of 2 fighters clashing with all of their might and skills into a game. That's what we are trying to challenge right now. And so we have our experts that are going to discuss about a few points we got and provide also maybe inspirations for all of us, for them maybe too. And we can have maybe a little icebreaker. We thought about that. Maybe it's worth, since we have very important guests. The icebreaker is basically present yourself. Do you want another mic, or we can share this one between the 2 of us?
Oh, perfect. So intros.
Yeah, a little intro.
Yeah. I'm Tuomas Pirinen. I'm a game designer. You might know me from games like Warhammer, Mordheim, French Crusade on tabletop. On the video games, I've done Resident Evil, Need for Speed, FIFA, most recently Saros for PlayStation, and lots of other games. I'm really old. That's the only reason, right?
Hello, I'm Alessio Cavatore. Even older than Tuomas, I'm afraid. I've worked on all Games Workshop stuff, Warhammer, Fantasy Battle, 40k, Lord of the Rings, and then I made my own company to make more games, and perhaps the most well-known is there's the Labyrinth board game that did it well, a lot of copies. There's Tales of Equestria, the My Little Pony RPG. The Pacific Rim game is actually quite relevant today in terms of dueling big monsters. And recently I worked with Warlord Games a lot, bolt action, so miniatures, World War II games, and Mantic games, where we're doing Kings of War, another rank and file fantasy battle, and now working on a Ghost in the Shell RPG, which is coming out soon, so very exciting.
I'm Ruger, I'm the intruder here probably. I come from a very different background in a sense, also mixed from tabletop role-playing games, a lot of 2 players role-playing games designed in the past, but also a bit of video games, a bit of formative didactic games for schools and hospitals, and now board games for Simon previously and now for MS.
Well, it's a pleasure Thank you. So, first question. We saw the Vanguard, a presentation for the Vanguard, which is a duel game, but also a fighting game. But indeed, the question is, when does a 1v1 game start become a duel for you? What do you think? And there is, I don't know, a specific emotional or mechanical qualities that, in your opinion, this kind of game have to be. And, there is a specific distinction in game design, for example. You are an expert on that, so maybe there is some, specific path that describe a duel game. What do you think?
I can start. In Finnish mythology, the most famous duel was not with swords or weapons, it was two magicians singing, trying to cast another so they would sink into a swamp. So I think the duel can be a lot of things. It could be like a poetry recital, but I think it's important that there is stakes. Often it's a life, but it will also be reputation. A duel could be a letters. There were famous duels during the era of enlightenment. People would just send public letters to each other and duel that way. I think duel can be many things, but I think it's important. It's a confrontation, because if it's a friendly chat, we are not dueling. We are having a battle. We are not against each other. I think there has to be a conflict. That's my.
Yeah, I mean, we already said that duel games are really difficult. That's my personal experience. I always found them really, really difficult because of those lack of variables. That's the problem. There are so many. In other games, the other games are more forgiving because there are tons of variables. A duel game is pure, is one-on-one, has that almost intimate feeling of, is you and one opponent. I'm done kendo. I've done kendo for many years, so I'm shodan, first dan kendo, and trying to capture what you feel when you're holding your sword. I don't know if you guys has anybody been in a duel? Hands up.
Yeah, martial arts.
Martial arts. Anybody? Any proper duels? Yeah.
Boxing. Yeah.
It is terrifying. It has. I remember my brain always telling me, "Oh, I need to go to the toilet. I cannot go on the ring now. Something wrong. Oh, my legs is not working." Your brain keeps you trying to make you go out. So trying to capture that in a game is difficult. Trying to capture the terror, the fear of that moment, very difficult. So if you can somehow manage to do that by making it maybe super deadly, like you were saying about the killing blow, etc., trying to avoid the killing blow, is that trying to get to those points difficult, very difficult. So.
That's very true, and I will not spoil one of the questions because I will chain to this discourse in the last question.
Okay.
But yes, I will say when people think first of all, I don't have the truth in my pockets, sadly. So everything I say is my opinion, of course. But generally, when you talk about duels, there is of course a cultural mainstream in a sense of a narrative of what a duel is. So when you think, oh, this is a duel game, people think about sword fighting or people walking away from each other with an old school pistol to shoot each other in the heart. But a duel, as you say, can be a lot of different situations on 1v1. And especially in the board games, we've seen in the past decades a lot of dual version of multiplayer games. But in my opinion, I will say, I tend to think, is this a game about a duel or a duel game? Is the duel between our characters or between the players, in a sense? And some games are duel games between players, like if you think chess, I will say it's a duel, but it's not about a duel, the game itself. And I think it's useful to think, again, starting from an emotion-driven design, do I want to bring the duel as a feeling or as a thematic point? And you can do both, of course. And I would say, for me, I have a very large definition of what a duel game is. So I would say, if it's the one with you, if it's a two-player game, a competitive one, and I will say it has that kind of tug of war feeling of every time I lose ground, the other opponent gain ground. Yeah. I will say that feeling is part of the DNA of a duel game.
So we can confirm that there is no real recipe in game design. It's a pretty wide situation, but of course, first of all, the emotional part and then you create the mechanics to present this kind of emotional situations. Okay, thank you very much. Second question, maybe?
Okay, let's go with the second one. Yeah, let's proceed. Simulating a fight is incredibly difficult, as we said. And especially I feel with what Alessio said, because you are translating physical actions, timing, especially psychology and risk. You told it perfectly, into completely different tools: cards, dice, tokens, miniatures, inputs, whatever. So when designing a new duel game, what does come first for you usually? Is it the thematic aspect or the core mechanic structure that guide you? How much should a duel game try to simulate the reality of a fight, and how much should instead focus on readability, tension, and player experience?
I can only speak for myself, and other people could give different answers. For me, it's all about theme. You look at all the great duels. Let's use movies: Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker. In Highlander, Kurgan versus Highlander. In Dune, you have the Harkonnen versus the Atreides. All those duels are emotional. Like there is a lot at stake, and a clever filmmaker builds that tension up. But are the film duels realistic sword fights? No, because they are entertainment, and I am entertainment maker. I make games. I think another designer than me could make a simulation duel game. I couldn't, and I don't want to, because I want a lot of people to enjoy it. When you do simulation game, you are targeting a smaller niche audience. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just not that designer. I want a game that almost anybody can play. So to me, the theme is important, because it's not a real duel. Do not start hitting each other when you play my games. Let your models do it. We are translating duel into tokens, dice, cards, so the violence is not real in any sense. So to me, you have to build the tension and emotion from the theme and the sort of the models, poses, the stories you tell, because putting down cards, no matter how many times Yu-Gi-Oh! Tries to claim it, is not as dangerous as somebody trying to hit you with a real sword. That's my feeling.
Yes, I think you're correct. Simulation of a real duel will be a very, very quick game. As far as I know, a real duel lasts a couple of seconds. A couple of seconds. Not, the fancy hours and hours swashbuckling things that we are used to. So, it would be dead. It's the end of story. So, not very entertaining. My take on duel games from painful experience was that the trick, the way I tend to, the thing I focus on to try to make it more interesting for me is the environment it's happening in, because it's always if I can get to that chair, then I stand on the chair, throw the chair, it's like, or this thing can get in my way, or I can trip, or if I can push the opponent down the stairs, then I get an advantage, the Errol Flynn thing. So in a way I cheated, because instead of going purely on the action of the two, adding environmental element. I think starting with the simplest one, which was really difficult because it was so simple, was the wizard duel. Actually, the title is Wizard Duel between Saruman and Gandalf inside Orthanc, when they're blasting each other. I had to make the game. You have two miniatures and a hex room. I was like, right, so they're gonna blast each other. But it has to be really, really simple. You cannot put a lot of cards and stuff. I was like, oh, this is gonna be so boring. So what I did is I put the plinth in the middle. So it was all about trying to smash the other guy into the plinth. So maneuvering so that you go right. Basically the walls, because it seemed that the damage came from hitting things. So again, it was about the doors and the environment. I think it's important to give variety to the thing.
I will add that, first of all, I have also another thing to add to the last question. We'll see there. I will add also that the duel between mechanics and team narrative is a fake duel. It's like there is a duel actually. Somebody is whispering in their ear to fight themselves, and it's ludology versus narrative again. But actually, in the high ground with the cape, and there is the emotion-driven design that is the most important thing. So mechanics and the team should follow the emotion you want to bring to the table, and they should pull together and agree on what you're bringing. So I personally start from the emotion. Yeah. And if you start from the emotion of the duel, mechanics and team will follow, I would say. Okay. But personally.
Okay, so probably you want to add something?
No, just say, I think you should get the first answer next to balance as a game mechanic. You start.
Okay.
Let me do that.
Yeah, but I want to I don't know, do you want to add something, Thomas, on that? Probably could be interesting to link to this answer and talk about medium. Because indeed, you think about the emotional part, but also you have to, to think how you can use this game. For example, if you are implementing a video game or an RPG or a tabletop gaming, is very different approach probably in terms also of emotional part, but also the material that you will use. So what do you think about that? It's a mess.
Oh my god. You are opening a Pandora's box here, because we can talk about this for 8 hours. No, I would say there is the entire para-game area of design, where you can design the materials and what is around the game to enhance what the game is bringing to you. So for example, one thing that you mentioned about the challenges and the size of the miniature, and you went for the 54, I think. One thing you say is that when you, for example, have let's say a large-scale war game with a lot of units, from a game that has that kind of bird's eye view, the hands, the arms, they're not important. But in a duel, they are. So if you make the figure larger, you are also giving more importance to those kind of details, and you are conveying this is a game where these things are important. And I think those are choices that, again, they are not mechanic changes, they're not even thematic changes by themselves, but they are small changes that helps you convey that thing. And I think those are extremely important, and it's actually an underappreciated area of design, I will say. Again, due to, sadly, the mechanics versus thematic fake duel that's happening, a lot of people are ignoring what is around the game that I think is extremely important. And if we don't think about that as designers, publisher will think about that, and we better start thinking about it.
Yes, I think you touched upon a very important thing, that is detail, isn't it? So these games are all about detail, minutiae detail, really position of the blade, angle of the blade. You're going to. I think it's natural. You have to, because obviously if you're dealing with armies, you can be a bit more wide strokes. But here you have to go so much into everything, because you have to use all of that. Otherwise, the game is too simple, if there is such thing.
So to go to the latter part of your question about the importance of medium, it's hugely important. I've done a dueling game for video games. It's the worst game I've ever made, so I'm not gonna talk too much. But the good thing about doing a video game is that you can do real time. So you get more of that the action reaction. Of course, it also means that you will limit yourself to certain kind of play. Of course, you can do a turn-based video game, dueling games. But if you look at what they are called fighting games, Soul Calibur, Tekken, the Street Fighter, those are all real-time games, and they play to the strengths of the medium. While on the tabletop space, maybe you could come up a dueling game, something that's like Hungry Hippos, but it wouldn't be very accurate. So Smash and Robots kind of game, which is very random. But if you want a tabletop game, then you have to simulate it. So you need a very, very different approach for a RPG, for a board game, or a miniature game, or a video game, and in video games, different approach to PC game, to console game, to mobile game, because how the player interacts with the game is wholly different. So very different approaches needed. You can't one-on-one convert these from one game to another. You'll start next one.
I was just thinking that this man is lethal at Tekken. I remember him playing with Paul. I thought that was good. I play Lee. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do my kung fu. This guy just punched me in the face so many times.
Ok.
I didn't beat you with 10 points.
Che cazzo di domanda siamo? Mi sono perso. Ok, alla 4. Ok. Duel games often create very intense one-on-one interactions. From a material, physical, and ergonomic perspective, are there specific solutions you consider especially effective for this kind of experience, and how different are they from the from what usually works in other types of games, in different types of games? So basically, you have some tricks in your head to solve.
I think unluckily I get this question first. Yeah, I think I already kind of answered it before. I like in these kind of games. I normally my type of design philosophy is I try to minimize things always. I minimize things to the smallest possible denominator. In this case, I can't. In this case, I cannot go to my usual minimalistic approach. I have to add more detail that I personally am comfortable with in many games. So that was perhaps why I find it very difficult. I have to add detail and detail and detail. And when to stop adding detail, that's an art form, right? So some people will think too much detail. You know, they want as much detail as possible. They want as much granularity. I want to play with 20, 50 cards. And some people want it pure and simple. I personally tend to go on the simple. However, this one here, the dual game, is the one where my philosophy probably doesn't work. So maybe that's why I've never done a very successful dual game. It's just not me.
I actually have very little to add to this because you already added a lot on point. I would say that also, as we mentioned, following recipes in game design does not bring you to a good place. Because again, I think that you want to avoid, perhaps in our game, maybe in a live action role playing game, something you need or you want. So I will say be aware of the medium of the specific kind of game you're working on, because there are expectations, there are heuristics, what people will expect, and people will react strongly in good and bad ways at the same time to your choices. So be aware of what the kind of players that will play that kind of game will expect from you, and design accordingly. Like, unless you're baking sweets, do not follow recipes.
So Alessio already covered pretty much my answer, but I do have one trick. So as Alessio said, Tekken is one of my all-time favorite dueling games. And when I was doing Vanguard design, I went, why do I like it? Tekken has a very clever design mechanic. One button is left hand, other is right hand, one is left leg, other is right leg. So I took that idea, and this is why I have the cards for left hand, right hand, and then for the feet together, the stance. So it's much easier for you to imagine that, like, I put a dagger in my left hand or a pistol and my rapier in my right hand, and then with I'll start running. So I put a fast moving stance on my feet. So that was the trick I picked from that game, and I brought it in because it's quite intuitive. People instantly understand when you said, what do I have in your left hand? But a lot of fighting games, they greatly take it away from real world, and it becomes very abstract, and it's harder to feel that you're fighting a duel if you don't know what you're holding in your hand.
Just a curiosity about this part, ergonomic part, you know? Do you think that is easier to create something using dice, for example, or a lot of cards? Or maybe when you design something, because in this kind of game, usually it's a character based game, okay? Because you have a very few amount of elements on the table. What do you think? It's better to put, because I know that you prefer less amount of information, but I don't know, more card or using the dice because the probabilistic curve is easier to manage? I don't know.
Yeah, well,
Differ?
every designer will give it a different answer.
Yeah.
I find cards to be really useful. I had to add the dice to avoid repetition, but the cards, if you look at what's the most popular and successful dueling games of all time, it's Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! And they are card games, so maybe they are onto something.
For this reason, I ask.
Well, if it's about ergonomics specifically, I think my favorite dueling game, so I would recommend using this, is I don't remember what it's called, but you have a figure made of wood, and you have one hand you control the left hand. It's a cocktail stick, like a stuzzicadenti.
Okay, yeah.
On the other hand, you have a shield, so you can maneuver the cocktail
Really?
stick and the
Wow.
shield, and the head of the figure is a balloon. It's an inflated balloon. So you're trying to pop
Crazy.
the balloon, and you're using the shield to protect. I don't know what it's called, but just inflate the balloon, put it in the head of the model, and then you're doing this.
Absolutely amazing game, I think.
So ergonomic-wise, I think
Yeah.
that's brilliant.
I would add that that's a lot. I will give you an example. I will say, even though it's a game published from a competitor, but it's a great game, so I will suggest it. In the Asmodee, in the board game area, Asmodee have published an Italian tag team, and I would say it's a dual game. It's a 1v1 where you control two characters in a kind of a Tekken style beat 'em up with asymmetrical character. Each character has their own mechanics. And the core box is a small box that comes with a roster of 12 characters. And it's amazing the fact that they were able to give very different player psychometries for these characters with just a single card for the character and a deck of like 12 cards. And that's it.
Yeah, and it works.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Go try or play tech team because it's great.
Thank you. Maybe something interesting for someone that would try to make a game like this. So, in your experience, what is the most common mistake that people make when try to design this kind of game? Maybe based on your experience.
I have
yeah. Or there is something that looks good on the paper, but when you try
it's
reality.
It's an advice from me, so it's worth noting. But
For everyone, maybe.
There is a thing that Bjarke Pedersen and Johanna Coriolan said multiple times about. They were talking about live-action role-playing games, but I think this applies a lot to every kind of game. And it's just be aware of the tug of war between playability and plausibility. Because if you approach a thing, and when you talk about duels, a lot of duels narratives come from other media. Movies, books, then people that design dual games, they usually approach to like, oh, I want to do that, but in a game. And it's easy when you try to adapt something to board games to take the approach as a simulation. So I want to simulate what the duel is. And then they forgot the emotion that the game should bring you. So be aware that it's an inevitable tug of war. The more plausible a thing is, the less playable it is. Okay. We can fight about this later if you don't agree with this. In a duel, of course. But it is a pitfall. I've seen, I do mentorship with younger designers, and I see a lot of people try to simulate a situation without making it playable. Yeah. So they have an incredible simulation of what's happening, and then when people play it, they died inside. So be aware of this tug of war. And I'm not saying you cannot do a simulation game. There are a lot of great ones. GMT publish a lot of incredible board games, war games. The Coin series is a favorite of mine. They do a lot of simulation there. But still, they are aware of what they're doing. So be aware of what you're doing. And especially if you're starting designing, and I hope you are all starting designing games. If you're starting, be aware of the pitfall, because it will be very easy to be ensnared by the idea of, I want to simulate this. Make it playable.
Thank you. Well, I think following that, again, is very generic, I guess, is play tests. A lot. That actually stems from, speaking of, I was playing a game, because I'm lucky enough that I play games with Jervis Johnson and Rick Priestley a lot. And we were playing specifically, I will not say which game, but we were playing an old, very old Italian game, because the whole point is we play really old games. That's the whole point. Really, like, from the 70s and stuff. So I brought up this Italian game, very, very old. I was like, oh yeah, this is about knights and things. And part of the game has a duel between a black knight and the knight that is trying to free the friction. So you have the classic duel. And I was like, oh yeah, this is really clever, Jervis. You do it with cards, and you have, I play halberd, and you play shield. So it was an effectively paper, scissors, stone, glorified version, yeah? And we played, there's a little chart where each figure is matched, and there's a chart, so, shield, bit, axe, bit, sword. So it was we played this, and we scored a draw. All right. Then we played again, and we scored a draw. It's like, James goes, Alessio, I think you find that this game can only end in draws. I was like, no, surely no, Jeffy, you must be wrong. So if I play this, draw. So basically, of all the hand of cards, whichever order you played in, it always ended in a draw. So I was like,
the microphone down.
It was literally, maybe playtesting is a good idea.
So on a high level, I'll give an example, but on high level, what you want to avoid is being boring. Alessio just told a very, very boring dueling game, because you already know how it's going to end. So there are many, many ways to avoid that, like over-complexity, boring, duel always ending in a draw, boring. But one thing that a lot of new designers fall into is put everything on random. But that's also boring, because if I have no agency, it's just a dice roll-off, and there is nothing to learn, no skills to pick up, and no excitement, because I have nothing to do with the end result. So don't put your design solely down to randomness. I think you're starting next.
Lucky me. So I'd put it this way, because we have like 7 minutes before the next panel.
The last question.
So yeah, we have you can choose. Yeah, we have a couple of questions. We can be quite fast. One is about campaigns. So if there's a way to do campaigns of duelist games, and then since you're there, I think you can add your favorite dueling game if you have any. So yeah, please.
Okay, campaigns, yes, I think it's a great idea, because then if a duelist is wounded, you can definitely play into the, I have a niggling injury and stuff, so, and maybe I develop more skill. So absolutely, it seems like a natural thing to do. My favorite dueling game, that's a difficult one.
Your game also.
To be honest, I think I remember a very old Star Wars little book where one player had the TIE Fighter book and the other player had the X-Wing book, and it was like you picked a maneuver and the other guy picked a maneuver, and then you reveal them at the same time and it will tell you the outcome. It's like a play your own adventure but interacting. It was pretty cool.
Do you remember the name?
I'll find it.
Fantasy fighting game.
I'll find it for you.
Very good. Oh, very interesting.
Campaigns, yes. Make it legacy. You lose an arm, rip your arm cards.
Why not?
It's hard, so good luck to anybody. And I will add the thing that I mentioned. A favorite dueling video game, and there is no competition at all. It's like I haven't found in 20 years a game that can reach that. It's an old PlayStation 1 fighting game from Square Enix.
Okay.
For Squaresoft at the time, and it's Bushido Blade. Bushido Blade.
Oh.
It's a fighting game where you don't have any health bars. A single hit, you can kill the opponent in a single hit.
Pretty punitive, I think.
I got goosebumps because it's so fucking tense. The characters are slow as fuck. They are crawling, and you have a stance button. You can change the high stance, the mid stance, and the low stance. You can have an horizontal hit, a vertical hit, and they mapped every possible option. You can have different weapons, so maybe you have a katana, you have maybe a naginata, and completely unfair, but who fucking cares? Because again, you have a longer wear, and if I hit you in the arm, you lose the use of the arm. If I hit you in the leg, you will crawl even slower than normal. And it's unbelievable. Go play that. You cannot buy it anymore, so go pirate that game, emulate it on the device you want. It's an incredible game.
What was the actual question before I go to my duel favorite? Campaigns, yeah, right. So the movie Duelists by Ridley Scott, it had 4 duels. But in the real history, those 2 guys had 34 duels and they didn't manage to kill each other. So read the book on their life. They wounded each other again and again and again. You can make a campaign out of dueling. It happened in real life. A lot of people fought many duels, even more in the age of knights, because it was actually quite difficult to kill a knight in a joust or a duel because they were so heavily armored. I'll go away from because video games. I agree, Bushido Blade is the best. for the tabletop games, I'm gonna go with the first edition of X-Wing, because a fighting planes is a classic duel, and before they ruined the game, that was an incredible game, incredible feeling of the maneuvering and trying to, and the great difference between X-Wing and TIE Fighter, their different strengths, which gives you yet another version of what kind of a game can be a dueling game. And I think we are out of time. Well, in that case, it's the, what else?
Maybe
Questions, anything?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I just thinking because I did fight with a sword against a naginata in Kendo. There was this lady, we brought a naginata, and when you're used to fight in a certain way and you find yourself in front of a weapon you don't know, it's not nice. She cut my legs all the time. I was like, are you allowed to hit my legs? Yes. Oh.
Okay, so I think that we have time just for one question from the audience. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do perché sì, sì.
Don't be shy, come here.
Yeah.
Duel between them.
Duel, and then we can decide.
The winner will ask the question.
I don't think we have the time to answer this question thoroughly, but I will try anyway. The level of abstraction of a game, this is the assumption is different level of abstraction of a game produce different game experiences. Do you have any idea what kind of different experiences they produce from the, I don't know, chess level of complexity to very simulating experience, and what kind of feelings and experience they produce?
Yes, I'm going to use a different genre, but the most complex game on a board game we know is the Campaign for North Africa, where setting up the board takes 20 hours. The average playthrough of that game is calculated to be 20 years. Nobody's ever completed a single game. That's when you go to maximum simulation. So it isn't really, and then you have a rock, paper, scissors is the simplest possible duel. It's about knowing who you are aiming for. The level of simulation is down to what audience you're aiming for. I try to make a game that somebody buys, so I need quite a wide audience. So I need a game that is exciting, replayable, has depth and strategy, but it's really easy to pick up and play. But if you want to do a game like Campaign for North Africa, where the Italian troops, if they don't get water for their pasta, their morale immediately collapses, by all means, but be prepared to play 20 years one game.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking exactly the same answer, as in, it depends on the player. It depends on different person. There is no answer that will be true. It depends on what the player wants, and different people will want different things. Different audiences, different levels of abstraction. We could talk about it in person if you want to have a chat this, but it will be longer.
Yes, it's of course a long and it's a Pandora's box, of course. But chaining to what I said before about the playability, usability, you need to also be aware of who is the game for. Because there will be people trying to buy and play Campaign of North Africa and not buying or playing an abstract game about a duel, and vice versa. And I will add, if you're designing games, please design the games you want to. Nobody's getting rich making games. So, of course, there is sustainability, trying to pay your rent and so on. But if you're designing a duel game already, do the best game that you want to see, and that should be your landmark when you're designing. And that should inform you which kind of abstraction you want or not. So, but that's my question. So if you want to lose money, follow my question.
I think...
One more question? Okay, go for it.
Very quick one.
Okay, I will be extremely quick. Thomas, once you said during a convention at Old Modena Play that when you design a game, you have to kill your darlings.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm pretty curious to know by you guys, during designing a duel game, which is the mechanic that you had to kill? You thought it was a very good idea, but was absolutely crap.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I killed a different darling because I have the same darling as Alessio. I tried to make as simple and clean rules as possible in duels. I had to kill that darling in order to make a good dueling game. I had to add complexity, or otherwise there is nothing to do.
Same.
Yes, kill your darlings. Not in a duel, where they're like it with their backs, so they don't see you, and you're not crying because looking at your eyes, and it's not. But there are mechanics that I love, that I try to put into the games. I love real-time board games, hourglasses, timers. I love them, and I end up killing them most of the time because they go against the emotion that you want to bring. So do that, kill them. They are not. They are not alive. So. Destroy them.
Thank you very much to you guys. We are perfect in time. I don't know if you want to add something.
No,
Thank you to you.
Thank you very much. Prova, check, tricks.